Hey everyone, welcome to another Reasons and Resources, and in this video we're looking at reasons and resources to learn the C programming language. So let's kick off first of all with the reasons why I learnt it, the reasons why you might want to learn it, and other reasons that I've stumbled across for learning it after I learnt it. So if we scroll down on the Wikipedia page, and I'll include links to all of the things I'm using as an aid memoir here, you'll see that yes, it's influenced quite a lot of languages. So I would say that because it is foundational for many programming languages, exposing yourself to C at some point, particularly if you haven't stepped into those languages yet, makes it easier, makes yourself more familiar with those languages. And that's where I found it really helpful, because my exposure to programming was through BASIC. And the structure of BASIC is quite different from C. And, you know, I learnt BASIC end of the 70s, beginning of the 80s really, I suppose. And was using it all the way through, pretty much exclusively through the 80s. And then sometime around, I would say, the early 90s, I think it's about, might be maybe 94, 95 perhaps, I learnt C. I just bought myself the sort of classic book on C, the C programming language, and sat down with that. And as a result of learning it, I ended up just as an exercise writing a tiny little module for use at work, which allowed sort of, very fast calculation of some sort of financial calculation. Because at the time I was like working in on a helpline within the rental market, within that sort of domain. And so we were doing a lot of hire purchase calculations using spreadsheets, and particularly something called early termination. Sounds ominous, but it's where someone wants to end their service agreement for whatever reason, and then maybe they just want to walk away, maybe they want to actually purchase the equipment. And so there's calculations for working out, like, how much they paid so far, is there anything left to pay at all, are they sort of surrendering it before the contract is up, or do they want to actually find out how much it'll cost to buy the equipment totally, and some of their rental would have accounted for that. So those sort of calculations, and often we'd have people phoning through on coming through on the phone line that would want to know as a starting point sort of what to expect. So we did use a spreadsheet for that initially, but it was a little bit clunky. So I just one day wrote a little C program that would run from the DOS command line to do that, where you just plugged information in and it spat out the result. So that's really that was my impetus actually for learning it, was I just wanted to have a language that I learnt in where there wasn't a ton of overhead and the program was really small. So that was, I wanted something efficient, high performance, and gave me excuse to learn the language. So performance wise, you'll find it used in system programming, game development, applications that require high speed. I must admit, when I was first introduced to it, I was aware that it was mainly used for the development of operating systems, drivers, particularly protocol stacks, and that it wasn't, mainly used for application software. For people that did that, then they probably went more to C++ and leveraged the object-oriented programming through that, and whatever other libraries that opened up. So There's probably a better program I could have used for doing, what I used it for, but it was a good excuse to learn C with a fairly simple example. C programs also highly portable, so you can take something running C and then compile it for a different compiler on another operating system. But you have to go through that stage, obviously. I found, and I know this is another reason for learning it, that it gave me a deeper understanding of how computers work, in particularly things like memory management and the inner workings of operating systems. I had a good understanding of how the hardware side of things worked, because when I learned computing, that was one of the first things you learn, was like the components of the machine. And I'd learned how to program, but I hadn't learned so much the sort of link between the two, if that makes sense, because using BASIC, a large degree of that, when you do this particular code, what's going on is abstracted away. The nice thing about C was that it allowed me to see more clearly how the inner workings worked without having to resort to, say, learning assembly language or doing machine code. Now, I did learn assembly language not long after that, but I think learning, doing things through the lens of C really helped without me having to really roll my sleeves up and dabble in assembly language. So if you start off with, as always, I suppose, the Wikipedia articles, you can learn an awful lot about C just through that in terms of resources. So you've got the standard article. Within that, there's examples of the syntax. You can see the early, like, hello world, what it looked like originally, what it looks like if you're doing it like the standard conforming way. Here you can see, it gives you examples, see how you include modules in the language. You can see here it gives you a description of what happens when you include this directive, and causing the compiler to replace a line of code with the entire text of the studio.h header file, which contains declarations for standard input and output functions such as printf and scanf. And it goes into more details about that, and this section of the program, and then main as well. It's quite a nice breakdown here of what everything's doing individually in here, because first exposure to this language after coming in from another language, in my case BASIC, I'd really hadn't seen the structure that much. I'd seen echoes of it, I suppose, to some degree in Pascal. But yeah, it's nice when you've got descriptions like this, which is sort of showing you how everything's broken down. And we can delve deeper, obviously, just through Wikipedia into the syntax of C, if we want to. There's an article on that, which is pretty convenient. The other thing I liked with C, in terms of the certain, keywords in the language and the syntax, it seemed fairly straightforward, the starting point, I would say here. Yeah, so that's another thing that attracted me at the time. And then we've got various uses. Yeah, as I said, when I learnt it, definitely I was aware that it tended to be used more for systems programming. But, you can use it for other things. Yeah, fairly small language, only a handful of statements. I'm trying to remember the one time that I wanted to write a DLL for use in like a financial package, just for a demo that I was doing at the time. Because I wanted to do like an animated aspect in there that it had been asked for this demo. I'm pretty sure I wrote the DLL in C, actually. I probably was using, I'm trying to remember what program I would have used at the time to do that, because that would have been the late 90s. So I was probably had access to a slightly better range of, slightly better tool chain then. So in terms of, career opportunities, those sort of things, which again, is another reason for learning a language. So if you look through, various job postings, no doubt somewhere in a lot of them you will see requirements for C/C++. As I've said, it's operating systems use, embedded systems use, highest performance computing, writing drivers. You'll often find interoperability with other languages, where C is really useful for writing libraries and various other things. And it's always interesting on this diagram when you look at the, if you look at the this particular survey by Stack Overflow, you see that these sort of C whatever languages clustered together. So most popular technologies, we've got C up here with the usual suspects, as I like to think it. There's this cluster here of, web-based languages. And then we've got Python as well, which can be used on web backends, but it's just a really good general purpose language that I ended up learning sometime after I learned C. Then you've got Java and Bash and Shell, and then we have it here, but before PHP and Go and Rust and Kotlin. If we look at this admired decide graph, which always intrigues me, and I always get around the wrong way, so let's try and get it around the right way this week. So desired 13.9, admired 47.4 in the survey. And then in terms of the top paying technologies, we'll probably find it quite far down the list, I suspect. Yeah, here we are. So what? Bottom quarter, bottom fifth, maybe, something like that. Whoops. Alongside JavaScript, Visual Basic, Java, Zephyr, which I don't think I've ever looked at, VBA and R. So yeah, this sort of area here. You can see things like PHP as well below it, and assembly, funnily enough, and then things like Kotlin, C# above it. So, what's a good portal in terms of, we've looked at other things like, you're probably familiar now with other episodes I've done where we looked at, the portals for Python, for Go, I think, and other ones. And, they're a real smorgasbord of information, and that's a really good starting point. For C, it's a little bit more complicated. So I've got a few resources that are quite good outside of the Wikipedia article to sort of start your journey. There's an interesting article by Dennis Ritchie about the development of the C language. This was written way back, in 93, I think, sometime around there. But we've also got this. So this is the sort of official home of the C standard. So I'll include links to that. And then you've got this page as well within there, the C approved standards. So if you're looking for, like a page which gives you a formal language definition, this is a good place to start. But I think once you've explored that, then you need to sort of go out, because you'll find it's not like the other resources we've looked at for, say, like I said, like the Python website or the Go website or the Ruby website, those sort of ones. This is more about the standard definition and documents. So there's a number of other places you could go. Going through, I think, the main websites for all of the IDEs that have a C tool chain like wrapped into them, normally alongside C++, is a pretty good way, actually, I think, of exploring the language. It gives you nice information about how to set the environment up. So I include links to the Visual Studio Code one, also the Learn C and C++ in Visual Studio resource, but then also a C and C++ Projects Quick Start tutorial for Apache NetBeans, because it's in there. And also, if you like to use code blocks, which I did install one time to dabble with C, but it also has Fortran IDE in it as well. It's an interesting one to dabble with. So there's some good starting points. In terms of how I learned, it was this. So I love this book still today. Obviously, there's newer versions of C. I think what we're up to, C23, something like that. What does it say the most recent one is? Yeah, October the 31st, 2024. C23. There's a preview release for C2Y. Oh, it was February 21, 2024. Yeah. So, but that's how I started. I have this ANSI C version of the book, second edition. There's also this resource which I stumbled across, which is something called the C Books. So just for clarification, this is called the C programming language. And there's something called the C Book, which you can actually download PDF version of it. And it looks something like this. So yeah, that's a possibility there. So you saw how easy it was to get hold of it from that website. That's why I included it. Tons of videos out there. Some of my favourites, really. That's all I think I'll do here. Is this one. It's a little computer file one. In fact, I've got quite a few computer file ones. They've done some cool ones around the C programming language. Often I'll go and see when I'm looking at a new language, do computer file have any videos on it? That seems to be my starting point. So, interview with Brian Kerrigan, who co-wrote this book with Dennis Ritchie. There's also a coffee with Brian Kerrigan. I can't remember if that's the one out in his back garden or someone's back garden. There is one that's very much like that, which is quite nice. We've got Why is C So Influential? Then interesting video about this is a sneak peek of C23, which went out about a year ago. So modern programming in C. Reintroduction to C at NDC Tech Town. This is through NDC conferences. This is through ACCU conferences. And then this one, which is quite useful. I've done CS50. It had quite a big, has a large component of C in it, and I found it really useful revisiting C and all the different assignments in there and stuff they talked about. And there's interesting podcast interviews to why they chose C. It's quite old now, but CS50. I really enjoyed my time going through this course, and also the other courses that are part of the CS50 group of courses. There's a Python one as well, which is super useful. And also there's a bit of cross-pollination in that some of the stuff you have to do in C, they get you to do on the Python course. So that was nice to see that and to go through that. So yeah, super useful. I try and regularly check in and see what they've got offering through this, through Harvard X as well from time to time. Sadly, the one that I wanted to have a look at was there was a gaming one. There was, I think, C# maybe. and they've removed that, so I don't know if that's going to come back. But there's plenty of other things to explore. Then there's a pretty cool SQL one and a web design one, and yeah. If you've not done any program before, there's even one for Scratch, that sort of thing. C is on exorcism, so if you're a big fan of exorcism, as I am, yep, you can check it out on there. And it's got the usual, functional explorations that you can play around with. And then finally, shameless plug, we've got my current sort of project where I'm trying to collate, you can read about it in the About section, actually. It's easier if you do that. But yeah, I do have a section on C. So there we have it. Hopefully you enjoyed that reasons and resources for learning C. Thanks for watching. Bye for now. And I will catch you in a future episode.